It was a rainy Wednesday evening in the Orlando, Florida area of a game development company, and I was working on a game with a tight deadline. As a result, I had to stay in the office late nearly every night that week. It was a dark and stormy night outside, and the sound of the rain hitting the window was helping me focus on my coding. My coworker, Jack, was also in the office, but he was also under pressure due to the tight deadline. It was around 8 o'clock or so, and Jack knocked on my office door to let me know he was going out. He asked if I was okay, and I said I was. So he left. I heard the door close behind him, and I was all alone. Our office is shaped like an L, with the entrance at one end, and our office at the other, which is basically the corner office. I was trying to stay awake since I was starting to fall asleep, so I walked down the hall to the kitchen to make some coffee to keep me awake for an extra hour. I was standing by the coffee maker, waiting for it to warm up, when I heard the sound of the door closing. I peered into the hall to check for someone and called out, but there were no responses. The door sounded like a private office door, not the heavier front door of the entire office. I exited the kitchen and walked down the 2 hallways, attempting to open all the doors that were locked. Upon arriving in my small hall, all 3 doors were shut, including my own. I had left the door open 1000%, and there was no draft in the room as all the windows were shut. I had a feeling that someone was still in the office, so I opened the office door with force, expecting someone to jump out at me, but there was no response. My office was as I had left it, with my computer and everything in the chair. I was surprised that the door shut on its own, as it had never done so before, but I ignored it and continued with my work. The rain continued to pelt the window, and the lightning continued to strike every minute, surprising me a few times. As more time passed, it was now too late to remain in the office. Satisfied with my progress, I saved my work and began to close down my computer. As I clicked the shutdown button, the screen went blank, and then I noticed a woman standing behind me in the reflection of my computer screen. I don't know how I didn't jump or shout, but I felt my heart sink into my stomach. I didn't turn around. I just got up from my desk, calmly grabbed my bag, pretending I hadn't noticed, and walked to the door. I went down the hall until I thought I was far enough away, then I booked it out of the entire office's exit. I ran down the stairs to the first floor out to my car in the rain. I was so scared I was being followed or that someone would grab me any second, whoever it was. Once I got in my car, I took a second to breathe. Then I looked up at my window to my office. There was still a light on in there, and I'm pretty sure I saw a small kink in my blinds, as if someone were standing on the other side looking down at me. I called my boss, Amanda, and she said no one else should have been there. She said she'd call the night guard and ask him to check the office. I went home, and later she called me and said the guard was in the office but didn't see anyone. I told her what I'd seen again, and she was really worried. We only had 1 camera in the whole office, and it was at the end of a hall near the kitchen. The camera footage didn't show any women walking around that night. A few years ago, when I was working as a janitor for an office building in Boston, I found out that even the most secure jobs can put you in danger. For the first few months I was working at the office, I was the night shift custodian, which meant that on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I and another custodian would go around the building and clean up. It wasn't the best job, but it was a steady paycheck, and it wasn't too hard. I didn't know there were so many links out there that some people would go through to get what they wanted. It was a Wednesday night, and I was just finishing up cleaning the 2nd floor of the building. My coworker was working on the 1st floor, which was our way of working. He would work from the top down, and I would work from the bottom up. After I was done on the 2nd floor, I radioed him and told him I was going to take a 5-minute smoke break before I started down to the 1st floor and headed toward the parking lot. As I walked out the front door, I felt a sharp pain in the back of my head and was propelled forward. I looked up to see 3 guys standing over me, one of them holding a gun and hitting me in the back of the head. They took me by the shoulders and started dragging me back to the building. I asked what they wanted, but they wouldn't tell me. They just kept pushing me towards the elevator. Every step I took, I just hoped my boss wouldn't call me up on the radio. We got to the elevator, and one of the guys told me to press the button to the 3rd floor right away. I knew that the floor was rented by a pharmaceutical sales company, and they were hoping to find drugs on the floor. They didn't know that the company only handled samples most of the time. I didn't argue with them. I just did my best to stay calm and hope they didn't hurt me. The elevator ride to the third floor seemed like it went on for days. When the door opened, I was shaking with nerves. One of the men asked me to move, but my legs were stiff with fear, which made him angry, and he hit me over the head again. I fell off the elevator and hit the ground on the office floor as the three guys got out and started walking around the office. I think they thought I was unconscious, so they weren't looking at me. That gave me the perfect opportunity to get away. I knew the lift wouldn't open right away, so I ran down the stairs next to it. As soon as I was out of sight, I grabbed my radio and told my colleague to stay put and hide. I also asked them to call the cops. Once I was outside, I ran around the corner and jumped behind a dumpster. I was lucky because one of the guys was right behind me. I saw him looking around while I tried to conceal myself from him, but it was not long before he approached the dumpster and began to walk towards it. I had nowhere to go, and my heart began to race, waiting for him to find me. Fortunately, my colleague called the police, and they were already in the area. Before he could locate me, I saw the red and blue lights descending the road as the man attempted to flee. The cops had both entrances to the parking area covered, and soon there were 6 cars outside the building. The officers stormed the building and apprehended the 3 men, who were found to be in possession of 2 boxes containing painkiller samples in their backpacks. All 3 men were apprehended and arrested for armed robbery. I was fortunate enough to be left alone for a split second.